Okay, so one of the final steps in this lead conversion process is actually taking those appointments you've booked and turning them into sales. Now, if you followed every step of the lead conversion process and training carefully so far, you should have been able to book a fair share of appointments with the leads that have came in from your lead generation campaigns. So now it's time to hop on that meeting, build that loyalty, and close that sale. We generally follow a process like this when we're on the appointment. This is how we structure it. First would be building rapport. Second would be introduction and agenda. Third would be asking questions to understand their current situation. The fourth would be asking questions to understand their desired situation. The fifth is explaining the process from A to Z. And the sixth is suggesting some next steps. So the first is building rapport. And yes, this is the first part of the process, but it's not simply something that you should simply just check off and just be done with later. It's really an ongoing process that is incorporated not only at the beginning of the meeting, where it's especially important, obviously, talking to them, cracking jokes, or whatever you're doing, but also it's present in each of the 5 major steps that comes after it. So it's really an ongoing process, and this is the number one thing you should be focusing on. Rapport building is the process of establishing a relationship with someone. So finding that common ground, building mutual trust and respect, and getting to know each other thoroughly. At the beginning of an appointment, that comes down to getting to know them, being genuinely interested in their lives, maybe cracking a few jokes, making sure your tonality is good. But at the end of the day, there's no real trick or hack to building rapport. It literally just comes down to one real thing, and that is sounding like a freaking human being when you're talking with them. I mean, we give you steps to follow and scripts and whatever, but your goal should be to take those frameworks and incorporate them into natural conversation. So you can't sound like you're actually reading off of a script, because that's just going to sound robotic, formulaic, and you're not going to be able to work with them or build any serious rapport. This is one of the many ways you stick out from other businesses if you do this correctly. So there are plenty of qualified and experienced people out there. So what do they decide on? They decide on emotion. Do they get along with someone well? Are you actually building an emotional rapport and connection with them? If they might even listen to you, think you're perfectly qualified, but still not work with you because you sound robotic and formulaic. You don't want that happening. You didn't build rapport properly, so none of the other proven steps in the sales process even really matter. This is super important. If you didn't establish a good connection right off the bat, you're going to be missing out on those leads that would have been a good fit, perfectly qualified anyway. And you could have a system for them that is perfectly aligned with their needs, and they could still walk away because you were too pushy or you didn't properly establish the rapport you needed to. Building off of that point, you cannot push someone further than they are willing to go. The lead should come to their own conclusion that your service will get them to where they want to be. If that isn't the case, then it's your job to educate them, guide them on the process until they actually get there and make their own conclusion. That's what's at the core of all this. It's much more about that education rather than selling or twisting somebody's arm until they comply with you. Trying to push somebody into a corner and sell your solution before you even diagnose the problem that they're having is going to make people run away, especially in competitive industries where they can just call their friend and see what their friend's recommendation is as soon as they feel inclined to. So in this case, the client really has to feel as if they're in control. You don't want to set off an alarm and they go running away to whoever's next. For this to happen successfully, for you to actually build rapport successfully, you have to put your ego aside as much as possible. So when you're scheduling appointments and following up with your leads, this is where it starts. You don't want to be thinking, oh, this lead isn't good enough to have an appointment with, or have some preconceived notion going into the appointment when you're working with these prospects. Because most of the time, you're actually going to be wrong about them. They have the capacity to change, and the entire point of all this is to be educating them, nurturing them, and guiding them through the process to a successful sale. The best leads are the ones that you reach before anyone else, and you have ample time to actually build a strong connection with as you guide them through this process. Let them know that they don't have to come on board with you right away. Give them some time, and you can guide them on the entire process until they're ready to pull the trigger. Become their number one trusted advisor and resource. If you're a real estate agent, for example, most people aren't going to be ready to look at houses immediately as soon as they fill out the information on your Facebook form. So your job in the meantime is to teach them about the market and about home buying. Same thing with any other industry. It's to educate them on the process before they're actually ready to pull the trigger, at which point you'll be there for them. Tying into the next step, which is the introduction and agenda, don't say that you're absolutely going to do this next step today or something intimidating like that. Rather, the first appointment is about diving deep into their problems and their situation and their desired state, and then educating them on the process to get there. This all may sound a little soft, I know, and you probably just want a sale. But selling is really an emotional process, and that's what you have to understand. Especially if you have plenty of experienced competition, you're not going to win over sales by just looking the best on paper. You need to be the most trustworthy and the most comfortable, and you need to elicit emotional responses as you're going through that appointment. With a really tough decision like buying a house or mortgage, especially, the emotional aspect is more apparent than ever. It's a scary emotional process all the way through. From your perspective, it seems like there's a known and proven process and you must be the right guy, but for their client, there are tons of unknowns in their head and tons of uncertainties they have to reason out before they're ready to move forward in the process. So that's what you have to explore during the meeting. What are those uncertainties? After you introduce yourself and get everything laid out, it's time to dig into their current situation. This is something we touched on in the Discovering True Pain Points video, and this is just as important during the appointment as it is during those follow-up calls, those initial calls when you first get in contact with them. This time, whatever you discovered on your initial follow-up calls, you want to be diving even deeper and asking more specific questions to find out more about their current situation during the appointment. So what is their current pain? And no, not just I need the service, but really what deeper problems is not having the service creating in their life? Compare that to their desired situation. Where do they want to be in the next few months? What specifically are they looking for, and why are they looking for it? This heavily ties into the emotional aspect of selling, because if you can get someone to open up about their current situation, their struggles, and their future desires, they're going to start to feel a sense of urgency to complete that purchase, to escape their current pains, but also excitement to achieve their desired states and excitement to work with you as a person. Not only will they look forward to the process itself, but they'll develop an emotional attachment to you during the meeting while they're spilling all this out for you, because you're hearing them and you're helping them solve their greatest problems in life. So view every meeting in terms of the current state and the desired state. Every prospect has these current and desired situations, and it's your job to be the bridge between those. It's not to pressure them into anything, it's just to get them to open up about what challenges they faced, and this will allow them to kind of connect the dots between you and the service themselves. You'll build that rapport, they'll build that attachment, and they'll want to continue working with you in the future. Lastly, after you've discovered what they truly are struggling with and then what they need in the future, you want to explain the process along the way from A to Z for them, and then guide them to some next steps after that. Again, you don't have to hard sell this like, I'm going to do this and you're going to do this, because if you simply explain the process, the home buying process, the solar panel process, whatever it may be, the prospect will build that relationship with you, and naturally it just makes sense for them to work with you in the future. So you should be that kind of that trusted advisor who they go to when they're ready to make that decision. If they're not ready to take the drastic action for those next steps, then that's okay. You can give them a suggestion on what to do next, continue to nurture them, and keep in contact with them regularly. Make sure to keep in contact with them over those next coming months. Obviously, don't be a pushover and just walk away and say, okay, I'm done if you're not ready to go. It's okay to be pushy, to actually establish that connection with them. So like, if they're not picking up the phone, it's okay to like use that bulldog method to actually get them on the phone. But after that, don't pressure them into anything really serious without their consent. Alright, so that was our training on turning appointments into actual sales. Again, it's all about building rapport, educating your prospects, and building the bridge between the current and desired states. Now, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.